once your turf, and hope you have a great time there.
Well, thank you. Has nothing to do with Emeryville, that's for sure. This job is as good as it gets.
Right.
So just
We
about,
hope you're
kind of-
going to make substantially more money there than you did here. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I hope so.
It is a big job.
It's a big job.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn of the East Bay.
Well,
here they're calling
they
it.
call it, some people call it that, yeah. But
And of course, if the Raiders don't stay in town, you know who to blame.
that's right, I'll take all blame for everything.
Well, I think, Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and start.
Okay.
I'll just
Yeah, just
pitch
one
right
second
in.
here. Just let me get
Sure.
this rolling.
Will you give me the green light?
Start here.
This is the February 23rd, 2015 meeting of the Finance Advisory Committee for the City of Emeryville. Assisted listening devices are available to the public. The meeting is being auto-recorded and also recorded by citizen Ken Bukowski. It is helpful but not required for meeting participants to identify themselves for the audio tape before speaking, and the meeting is called to order at 5:30. And first order of business, public comments. And I suspect, Ken, you've got
Yes.
some comments.
Yeah, I just want to share an idea that I had on creating an idea for a half-cent sales tax for affordable housing. 25% of which will be used to create affordable retail. I think we have a crisis in our hands. And I video record so many regional meetings that it occurs to me that if we had our own pot of money, we would attract a lot of other grant money. I recorded a meeting of the Strategic Growth Council, and it was a workshop submittal for applicants who wanted to receive the state money. And it's just really apparent that if we had funds, it would be a magnet for other money, especially since other jurisdictions don't have any money. The 25% retail component would create retail condominiums where the city could write down the cost of a retail space. That would eliminate the triple net lease and the overburdening landlords that small businesses have to deal with. I mean, you have to experience one of those leases to understand what it's like. They know they can rent to a chain store, so they're doing you a big favor. And if you make more money and you pay a percentage rent, then you're a slave to the landlord. You know, any taxes that come along get passed right to you, the ground and everything else. So when you see Jeff Spears says, well, we contribute $375,000 a year, it's his tenants that are paying for it. He's not paying for it. And so it's just that one bird there for the other, especially in this area where we're increasing the minimum wage. If you write down the cost of the space, they could pay the employees more money and charge less for goods and services. So I think it's a real positive idea, and I'm working with Stuart to create a ballot measure just to outline the issues so we have something to work with. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. And Ken and I talked about this a bit before the meeting began, and I agreed that it would be a good idea if Councilor Flashman wrote a draft document so that something concrete was before the community to think about with reference to sales tax idea.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is this specifically targeted for local businesses or businesses serving the smaller, finer grain
Well,
type
this
businesses?
is targeted to create the ability to have a locally served store, which really doesn't exist right now. You know, if you create the locally served store and you write down the cost, the community gets to choose who can have these units.
Precisely.
You would put a deed restriction in there so they couldn't use it as collateral for debt. So if they went out of business, it could be passed on to another.
That's why a spelled out draft proposal would help us all understand what's being suggested here.
But that's what the purpose is, and the community gets to choose. That's so important, because right now you're at the whim of the developers.
Okay, thanks, Ken. We have two sets of minutes, and I'm just delighted to say we have a quorum. Me, and Brian, and Benay.
Barely.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve those two sets of minutes from our May 29th, 2014 meeting and our December 4th, 2014 meeting.
Well, I can approve the, one of them, but I wasn't here for the other one.
You
I
could
wasn't here
still-
for the,
Okay, and Brian was missed one as well, so, well, let's not get technical.
Yeah.
Do we three agree that these minutes look okay to us?
okay.
Great. Yes, the minutes for these two meetings are approved. Thank you very much. We don't have to have a formal dance to accomplish that.
All right.
Now onto the regular agenda, but just one thing to say in advance. We had agreed to talk last time about possible ways for raising money for the general fund for the city. Possible ways of going out into the community, taxes, fees, and what have you, to bolster and strengthen the general fund. We won't put it on the agenda here, but when it comes time for a committee member comments, I'll center my comments on that and ask for discussion and ideas regarding anything you might have in mind. I've got at least one thing I'd like to propose for consideration. So, to the quarterly financial update, verbal and handout. Michelle, over to you.
Okay, so.
Maria's not going to be with us this evening because, as I said, not under the weather. So Michelle,
Okay.
it's your turn.
Thank you. So I'll just highlight the significant items under the revenue section. So the top revenue, budgeted revenue category is sales tax for the city of Emeryville. Currently, we're tracking at 42% of budget, but that considers the receipts that we received through December, which only actually include the November receipts. So we are, in fact, tracking very close to budget. I would expect us to be either at budget or slightly above budget by the time we finish the fiscal year. We just received the December payment, in fact, last week, and it's exactly as we expected. These receipts also include the East Bay Bridge sharing agreement that we have with the city of Oakland as well. So we have an agreement where we receive a portion of the taxes they collect, and vice versa. We submit to them a portion that we collect for the East Bay Bridge. So those are also included in these numbers as well. And again, we budget for those, and they are tracking close to budget. The transient occupancy tax, that is tracking currently slightly above budget. Currently, through December, we're tracking at 52%, even though that includes receipts only for the first 5 months of the year. However, it should be noted that the TOT does tend to fluctuate during the year. It's very seasonal. So the period from November to April definitely tends to slide down a little bit before it's on the upswing again for May and June. So, but at this point, I would say that we're tracking, again, very close to budget, or I would expect us to be a bit over budget by the time we finish the year end. But again, it's one of those sources that, you know, it can fluctuate from month to month depending on the season. And then the other category I wanted to mention is the business license taxes. So as you know, this is an annual tax, and the renewals are due by March 1st each year, so they're due by next week. They basically have one more week. The larger taxpayers tend to pay during that last week, so there's still some very significant receipts that we're still expecting to receive. But I checked it as of today, and we're at about 50% of budget. So even though this report through December shows that we're at 7% of budget, which is obviously very low, we only sent out our renewals during December, so it's really the period of, you know, January through March that we collect all of those, the majority of those taxes. So again, at this point, I would expect us to be at budget by the time we finish the fiscal year. The only other category I wanted to point out under revenue is, you probably noticed licenses and permits are significantly over budget. And that is primarily the result of There's 3 new development projects that we weren't able to project or predict at the time the budget was prepared. And I've noted those 3 specific projects in the narrative section. So we're in the process of doing a mid-year or midterm budget review. So when we present that, we will include the additional revenue related to this and also the additional expenses as well for a consultant on that.
In any case, it's good news.
It is, yeah, absolutely. So over to the expenditures section, our biggest category is staffing, and we continue to have some salary savings, although we've done a lot of recruitments during the past few months. So we've now filled the Public Works Operations and Facilities Manager. That was filled in November. And then the Recreation Supervisor, for example, was filled in December. So we did get some savings during the first part of the year, but we are gradually filling those positions. But overall, we may end up with a bit of savings there as well. And then under contract services, this category is also showing under budget. Probably the main cause of this is just the timing of receiving invoices. So the invoices that we're seeing reflected in this report likely don't include all the December invoices yet, the December expenditures. So there's always a bit of a timing difference there. And that's the same can be said for maintenance and supplies as well.
And just real quick, Michelle, the majority of the contract services, that's the fire contract, right?
Fire and also West Coast Code is a big one as well. Yeah, so they do a lot of the the planning building work. Yeah, but yes, absolutely, fire is a big piece of that. Let's see. So that's expenditures by type, and then the next page breaks it down by department. Again, a lot of the variances are explained. As we discussed, lower than expected staffing in the city manager office, and then let's see, and then community development services. We talked a little bit how the contract services, the reimbursements we pay for that may not have been submitted yet, so there's a little bit of a delay there in what's being reflected. And then, yeah, that's really the bulk of it. The fire department, again, we're usually about 1 month behind. So the December 2014 fire services invoice we would typically receive and pay in January. So
It all looked fairly normal to me, and there's nothing that catches your eye as looking problematical.
no.
And I know we're all watching very carefully the sales tax revenue, because we just don't know what that's going to be like in the future. Shifts in the economy, of course,
Right.
we expect that, but then that long-term worry about online sales hurting brick-and-mortar shops and businesses. But we're all watching that carefully.
We are.
And so far, this year, we're looking okay.
We are.
And another thing that Nora had brought up in the past was revenue from the Oaks Club. And I was driving by the other day, and I noticed a lot of people with picketing. That, I'm sure, is going to have some impact on their revenues. And she was suggesting that some of the other regional gambling establishments would also take away from the Oaks Club. Do we have any idea of what this latest?
Yes, yes. Last city council meeting, heard a good bit about Oaks, but I'll leave it to the pros, the staffers to comment.
Looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, how it could affect their revenues, I think, we can wait and see. They have I believe it's an expired contract with labor, and we, at the minimum wage conversation, did hear from quite a few of their workers that came forward. Where they are in their own negotiations, I don't know. And then, frankly, how that would affect us here in terms of our revenues. Obviously, this is a key, part of our revenue base. We actually get more revenue from the Oaks than our property tax, right? I think that's,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah,
That's true.
so it's critical for us, and so, we're watching it, but, kind of they're not a public agency, and kind of that's happening outside of staff.
One of the things I picked up from the public comment at the last city council meeting is that there's a tough bind that some of the workers are in regarding healthcare costs. And that's going to be a sticking point in the negotiations. So it's not an easy one, but we'll just have to sit on the sidelines and hope for a reasonable resolution.
Did you want a public comment?
Sure, one more comment?
Okay, well, the Oaks doesn't have to worry about the other gambling establishments because the Oaks is card games are games of skill, and then the other clubs is games of chance. So there really is no competition for the Oaks.
Okay.
And they're not going to feel the pain because they've gone through this many times. The union followed him when he played golf and picketed the golf establishment and everything else. It just doesn't impact his business, and he doesn't care. He's very aloof about it.
That what Ken is saying, in addition to the other comments that are made, is we're not going to sweat this until we have to, and perhaps we won't have to.
I noticed the parking lot was full.
And Ken is right, it's a very different kind of operation, and it's unique to the Bay Area.
People who play cards for skill have no patience for people in other places that don't know how to play cards.
Okay, anything else on the quarterly
No,
report?
nothing else.
Questions or comments? Brian, any remarks that you'd like to make?
Yes, I have a fussy request. When I've struggled reading this table every time, and I'm ready to complain about it. Some of the things have seasonal weights to them, and some of them don't.
Yeah.
And that is not at all expressed in the table. And I think that the first thing that I would want to know from each of these is how are we right now versus our expectation? And getting 32%, but we're on track, 50%, but we're not on track is really, it takes a lot of steps for me to figure out what each line
Yeah.
means.
And I think, something that we've talked about, which is exactly to your point, which is putting a projection in there,
Right?
right? And
So it'd be apple to apple,
say,
budget expected.
which, Michelle kind of walks through verbally, like, okay, sales tax is this, but we expect at the end of the year to be at budget or above. But having some, working that into the actual table here, I think it's a good point.
Not bad at all. I've tried to get around that problem, Brian, by looking at the previous year's cycle, just so at least I have a comparison point about the numbers. And that's not perfect by any means.
Right.
But I think your question's a good one. I suspect the staff will try
It
to
is.
accommodate it.
Yeah, but that's a good point, Bill, is we would probably use the prior year numbers
That's
as
what I
as a
do.
guline for the
To-
projection.
just to see,
That's-
how were
that's
we
you
doing
look at
this time last
Exactly,
year?
exactly,
And
yeah.
and then take a look and say, where are we this year
Right.
at the same time?
Right.
It doesn't solve the problem entirely by any
Right.
means, Brian, but it's
That's
true.
it's a way of trying to finesse the
Yeah.
lack of what we need to.
Yeah, we can certainly consider.
I think
adding
it's
a
something we
column.
should look
Yeah.
into, and even on the expenditure side, I think to
Mhm.
your point, I just kind of gut check it when I look at the bottom line, and I know, okay, we have so far, we've spent basically, 900,000 more than we did the same time last year
That's-
on the expenditures, right? So,
Right.
and I think,
Yep.
and I just know in my head what that is, that we filled some vacancies, that we actually, we negotiated our labor contracts, so people did get raises. And that gives me I know that is definitely within the gut check level for me, that it should be about that much more than last year. But there's no way to your point, that someone can just pick this up, whether you're a committee member or the public, and see, look at that, you've spent 900,000 more than last year.
Right.
Okay, what does that really mean? Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's a good point. I think it's something we
No,
really
that's
should
good.
affirmatively put in there.
Yeah,
Right.
yep. I'll make note of that.
And I suspect our staff, always capable at meeting our needs, can solve the problem.
We live in our little world, so we
Right.
assume.
A little world in which they know a lot of things, Benay.
Michelle, can I ask you, licensing and permits, those three projects, fairly large projects,
Mhm.
adding a lot of extra money.
Mhm.
Is there any way to project forward, looking like this time next year? Are there new projects that are on the boards for going forward, or?
If we know about them, and Charlie does budget for them, but typically we don't, unfortunately. So he budgets a baseline just based on historical average. And then again, if he's aware of a big project in the pipeline, then he will, that's fairly certain that he will include that in the budget.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's very hard, and this is when they actually pull the permit. And so that's oftentimes very, very difficult
Yeah.
to predict. And it will cross over fiscal years.
For example, even if you knew a big project was on the way, when the permit is pulled, it's totally up in the air.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions regarding the quarterly financial report? Are we all content? Reasonably content? Okay. To the next item on the agenda, which is the update on Alameda County Fire Agreement. Sarah.
Okay, so, yeah, we've included just a brief summary as well as the report from Alameda County Fire. And at this point, they are predicting to be 1.2% under budget, and the annual budget being about $5.7 million for the year. In dollars, that converts to approximately $70,000 under budget. So each quarter, they come back, with a report on kind of where we're tracking compared to the contract. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to report other than that.
I'll play the role of Nora Davis and be skeptical. Keep an eye on these people and make sure that we stay under budget and that we get the coverage. Of course, I know you do that. Okay, thanks, Ray. Any other comments or remarks about the fire? All right.
Actually, if I just wanted to give a little update on, I think at one point in this committee, we talked about the fact that two of the other cities that contract with Alameda County Fire were thinking of going with a different model. It's Newark and Union City. And maybe this was 2 meetings ago, I think.
Yeah, it was.
And kind of the impact that could have on us, because then our piece of the pie would become that much greater. And so we were watching that very cautiously. They have, in fact, Newark and Union City have decided to stay with Alameda County Fire. So that's a good thing for us.
Yes, it is.
So just wanted to update you all on that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
One less thing for Nora to worry about.
That's right.
Okay, good. Update on redevelopment dissolution actions and
Okay, so I got a brief update from Maria on this. So the 2015-16 AROPS, which covers the period July through December 2015, was just approved by the successor agency at last Tuesday's meeting, and it's going to the Oversight Board tomorrow for approval, and then is due to the Department of Finance on March 3rd. And in that, we're requesting to use approximately $4.8 million out of the reserves that we already have on hand.
okay.
And if I could tag on that a little bit, but kind of what the big picture impact of that is, the fact that we actually are proposing to just fund these expenditures out of our reserves instead of requesting funds from really the former tax increment or property tax, means that the city, we get our 22 cents back on those dollars. So we're anticipating, and that comes into, to help pay for capital improvements and some housing funds.
Right.
So the fact that we're able to just request to use our reserve funds instead of using the other pot of money is a good thing. So that means more money coming into the general fund.
And you're not anticipating any problems at the level of the oversight committee?
I'm aware of.
No.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see tomorrow.
Any questions or comments on that? Fair enough. Now to my favorite. Update on bonds, currently outstanding, et cetera.
Right, so.
And thanks, by the way, please thank Maria for putting this in a very user-friendly form. You know, I've been urging this for a long time, and it's just happening, and I'm very pleased.
It's great. I'll pass that along. She did mention that there's been no update since the last time we provided this, since the last time we met in December. However, there is a debt service payment that's due next week, and those funds, that's on the 2014 A and B bonds. And those funds have already been transferred to the fiscal agent. We've already received the funds, and so that is in process to be paid next week. Yeah. But no other changes.
Well, again, my compliments to the finance staff. First of all, the whole idea of refinancing our debt was a wonderful one, sensible, and this committee, I know, endorsed it and backed it with enthusiasm. And then the actual accomplishment of the deed was apparently done with great dispatch and skill, and it's going to save the city a lot of money. So, congratulations and thank you to the finance group. That's what. Please let Maria know we appreciate it. Any questions or comments about our debt, which is less than it used to be? I can remember the first time that Karen Reed reported the debt to us, it was just about $250 million. It was $250,000, and it's down substantially since then, which is appropriate for a city of 10,000.
And it's consolidated now.
And it's
too, which is
consolidated.
nice. No, it makes their life a lot
Oh,
easier.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
nice work, gang, and much appreciated by this crew. Okay, comments on the Child Care Center audit update, and I know you have our handout here.
Yeah, so we've included in the packet a listing of the audit findings from our auditors from their fiscal year-end audit they conducted when they were here in October. And updated in red are comments from Cindy Montero, the Child Community Services Director.
Cindy.
So these are her comments. So if there's any further questions on this, we can certainly follow up with Cindy. But presumably they're talking about this at the CBC committee meetings as well.
Right,
Yeah.
of course. My wife Ruth, of course, who serves on that committee, is very much interested in the early childhood operation in town. And I know they're wrestling with it and addressing it. And this is to keep us informed of how that's going. Any questions or comments?
I'm always concerned, let me put it that way, when children, small children are involved, and this sign in, sign out, and I know everybody says, don't worry, it's all. But to me, if I had a child and there was an issue with a sign in, sign out, that is all kinds of red flags in my humble estimation. And this isn't the first time I've seen this. And I would ask that this be put way higher, because unfortunately, parents get divorced and the children become a pawn in their game. So this has to be addressed.
Fair enough, Bernie. And I think, I know that Cindy knows, but Cindy is not going to be with us much longer.
To be determined, but I will share with you, we have a new center manager who just started 3 weeks ago, who is a superstar and who has the audit. She's got every other review that's been done of the center in the past, and she's just really, I mean, takes it so seriously, something like this, and I've talked to her about it already. And so I'm encouraged, I guess, cautiously optimistic about it, I guess. And you guys, yeah, I know there's been a lot of turnover at that center.
A lot of turnover in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Yeah, to stay honest about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Renee, don't hesitate to say it again.
Hopefully it's not on there again.
Yeah.
Let me restate, we will make sure it's not on there again.
And I know
Yeah.
my wife, Ruth Major, will also be watching for exactly the same things. Who wants to lose a kid in the midst
Oh.
of
No, that's-
a messy family situation or whatever? Okay, thanks on that one. Staff comments.
As I mentioned earlier, we're working on our midterm budget review, so we're sitting down with all the department heads and looking at their budgets that we prepared last year. And we will consolidate that information and present it, I believe, at our next meeting. And then it will go to council in June.
Okay.
And as part of that, just to, also to update the committee, we'll be incorporating the new revenue from the transfer tax that was passed in November. So that has yet to be incorporated into the budget here. You'll see, you know, in your table there, even though it took effect January 1st.
Has there been much activity in that transfer tax?
Yeah, we've been, you know, before we were receiving our 55 cents, I guess, right? So now we're at least getting our $12.
Yeah, we haven't received our first payment
yeah,
yet, but it
so-
should be any day.
Yeah,
I expect
but
this
before the
week.
end of this month,
Yeah,
it's supposed to come
exactly.
in, right?
Yeah.
We just missed a huge one, as you know, Renee. That was
Two.
two huge ones. Unfortunately, I would have put some millions of dollars in the city's coffers.
Yeah.
But it's there now, and it's a source of income. And since we're all here in this room, defenders of the general fund, there's hope. There's hope.
Yeah, and the, you know, kind of as we're looking at the base, you know, kind of what's predictable on the transactions, and then, you know, as Bill mentioned, there's these large one-time transactions that occur that are very unpredictable, which we won't include in the budget, but certainly won't turn them away when they come in. So
There are, just to make a kind of editorial comment, and the staff can correct me if I'm mischaracterizing it, there are some major development projects coming along with developers in action on them. And these developers normally don't continue to operate, but then they transfer or sell the business to the permanent operators. And those are the moments of joy that we're looking forward to in these taxes.
that's right. And we made sure when we wrote our tax measure that it didn't have any loopholes in there for, you know,
Right.
mergers
For-
and acquisitions.
for
and
projects
everything else.
underway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the future looks bright, even if we just missed a couple of good opportunities.
They'll sell again.
Yeah, they'll sell again.
Well, I was actually kind of worried because I know a lot of those real estate people I was getting robocalls and things in the mail.
Yes. Right.
Mhm.
Okay, any other staff comments? Content? Committee member comments, let me begin with my comment, and it's really, we had agreed that we would talk about other possible sources for funding and supporting and abetting the general fund. And we can continue this conversation, we don't just have to limit it to this afternoon. But I'd like to throw one right out on the table. I think we all are aware that our transit occupancy tax level is below that of both the city of Oakland to the south and Berkeley to the north. I can't remember just off the top of my head what the difference is in the tax rate.
14%?
Yeah. I
They're at
believe so.
14
What do we
and
know,
we're at
12?
at 12.
Mhm.
It's an interesting source of funding. If we bumped it up a notch, or we thought about equaling those of our neighbors, it might result in some millions in a good normal year coming into the general fund. It would require going on the ballot, but yeah, I very foolishly in the course of the task force on the Emeryville round suggested, well, we ought to just bump up the TOT and designate that the monies would go to the Emeryville round. And people pointed out to me that that's not quite that simple. It has to go on as a ballot issue. But it's something worth thinking about. A TOT boost of a modest amount, say a percentage point or two, and that might result in some interesting funding for the general fund.
Especially with the new hotel coming on board.
something like that.
Mhm.
Other
Yeah.
suggestions or comments? And if you don't have any for today, we'll keep this on the agenda for subsequent meetings. And I think that's it for my time. Any comment, Ron?
No, sir.
Renee? Well, on that cheery note, I declare this meeting adjourned at 6:04. Thanks very much, all of you, for attending, and I'm